Well, it's that time of the year again, friends. As of March 31st, 2025, Ascension's development will have reached 6 years old. It's kinda crazy looking back. When I first conceived all this, I imagined it taking it like 3 years tops, but now twice as much time has passed since then, and I'm not even done with like the playable campaign, much less side content or graphics or music or any of the other many things that have to go into game development. And that's not to say things are going wrong, by the way. In fact, despite recent circumstances, things have actually been going a lot better. There's a decent amount to go over this time around, so for the convenience of everyone, I've divided this video into several smaller parts that can be easily navigated by the timestamps in the description. Feel free to take breaks from the video or skip around to whatever topics you're interested in. To say the game is in a good state right now is an understatement. To go over the most basic of progress, Act 3 is complete, and Act 4 is currently under development. In fact, as of now, Act 4 is already 27% complete, approximately. The completion of acts is based on segments of the game's story, so certain segments, such as those containing dungeons, will take longer than those that are made up entirely of cutscenes. That being said, the fourth segment that contains Act 4's first dungeon is already underway by the time I'm writing this, and well, as I'm saying this. So hopefully we will be able to keep up to good work and come back to you all next year to tell you that Act 4 is done. That aside, however, there is more to the game than just campaign completion. There have been significant reworks throughout the game that have altered how the average player will experience it. The first of these was a complete redesign of Act 2's final dungeon. It was a neat concept, but it was incredibly boring. The puzzles involved fighting like a few static encounters and then moving boulders to make new pathways, which seemed interesting at the time, but the dungeon itself did not compare to the more ambitious dungeons that came before and after. Without going into too much detail, this dungeon has you going after different objectives over time in order to stop an attack on a ship, ending with the act boss fight against some familiar and unfamiliar faces. We've also had the pleasure of having someone not attached to the game playtest, and the feedback was incredibly valuable. Some feedback included, quote, "The game is too easy when you invest BP into something that isn't EXP gain," and "Fusion is very overwhelming and obtuse to interact with when you have all the recipes unlocked at once," unquote. Something any normal person would probably think of immediately. However, neither me nor my co-developer Magic managed to think of either of those things. Now, in our defense, we're so used to playing the game repeatedly over time that new additions are spread out and don't feel like it's a lot. And also, we naturally gravitate towards certain playstyles over time because we play so much, so we never give ourselves the chance to discover these issues. We've been slowly working on the former issue over time, making some enemies gain stats at a faster rate per level, and even increasing base stats on occasion, though we still have a long way to go before things are perfect. The latter issue, however, I think has been resolved in a rather good manner. The fusion system has been tweaked with the addition of a progression system called catalogs. In Act 1, there's a forced tutorial where you go to the fusion station in a town upon your first arrival there, where you receive a fusion catalog. You get one of these every act, and they allow you to buy items that teach the player fusion recipes. These require money to purchase, and upon doing so, you unlock the recipes immediately. This bars certain recipes behind story progression, and while I think having some of the strongest weapons available early on in Act 1 incentivizes exploration and growth, this does allow me to fine-tune the difficulty and resources available to the player much more easily. So I think this system is preferable. Lastly, while it has nothing to do with the game itself, this year has been really good when it comes to character sheets. As of now, all 12 playable characters have their sheets completed, along with all currently planned major characters, as well as 5 minor characters. With the distinction between minor and major characters just being whether or not they're important enough to warrant getting a character portrait. This may change later, however. Of course, this may not be news to anyone, as I've been showing these off every week if you follow me on my socials, though you may not know that because you haven't seen them. That's because they're not on my private Twitter or my developer Twitter accounts, nor are they on the new social media site I use, which I'll get to, but instead, they're on my new Patreon! Yup, I have a Patreon now. I'm sure you may be wondering why, and I can't tell you, but I'll have to do it later. It requires some context to explain, and this segment isn't the best time to do it. But what I can tell you is that now if you want to support me or my game, you can officially do that. You can join as a free member, which gives you notifications whenever I post something, but the real meat comes from the paid tiers. The first of these tiers is called Easy XP. It provides two benefits, the first being weekly development updates and behind the scenes info. Things I mention include the character sheets and details on the character, some mentions of my current progress in the game itself, and some miscellaneous info, such as the progress on the script that I am reading off of right now. The second benefit is a shout out at the end of any of my projects, so long as you're a member when they're finished. For example, if you're a member, your name will appear at the end of this video. The second and highest paying tier is referred to as Regular Enemy. It comes with the same perks as the previous tier, with some more on top of that. The previously mentioned shoutout gets an upgrade to vocal shoutouts, which means I'll thank you at the end of the video. If you need an example of what the shoutout is like, I recommend checking out GameChamp 3000. Not just because it's a good example of what the shoutout looks like, but also her content is just great. Tangent aside though, this tier also comes with the benefit of early video access. Any of my major uploads, which is basically just anything scripted or with editing, will be available for a whole week on Patreon before it's available to the public. And if this is giving you any ideas, I'll go ahead and clarify that yes, this video has actually been available since March the 24th. It made writing the intro kind of odd since I didn't quite know how to word things, so... I'd like to end this segment by saying that while being a member on Patreon is greatly appreciated, it will never be required to play the full release of any of my games. In fact, originally, I told myself I wouldn't make a Patreon, at least not until I reached certain milestones that in my head were always some arbitrary number, like 1,000 subscribers or something. I was largely convinced to make one by a friend after voicing my want to make one, but being dissuaded by the belief that no one would support me. Of course, this may lead to the question, why would I want to make one so badly anyway? I try not to get into the habit of discussing my private life on here, largely because this is the place where I talk about my game dev escapades and not my personal life drama or whatever. However, the last year has been rather rough for me. Ever since 2021, I worked a warehouse job that I absolutely hated. It paid really well, mind you, but the job and the people running it sucked. And in the end, it was too much for me to take anymore. Now, why do I tell you this? Because once I was done mentally, I was done completely. I quit and eventually I was convinced to go to college. And mind you, I didn't want to go to college after graduating because I felt like I didn't need it. But after that experience, any job even remotely close to what I wanted to do was better than working in a warehouse. Of course, going to college didn't change the fact that I had to pay bills and, you know, take care of my dog, Axel, my precious baby boy. So I got a part-time job working retail. I won't go into detail because, you know, I work there. But I'll just say, it's a lot better than the warehouse. Of course, as expected, considering this job is quote-unquote unskilled labor, I'm not making as much, and you know, it's a part-time job. To put it simply, I'm making half as much money with less of half as many hours, and most of the money I have goes to bills. At best, I can save $60 a week for personal expenses, and right now, that basically all goes towards the character sheets. This wouldn't be a problem, except to finish my game, I need to do a lot more commissioning. I have sprite artists, I have a portrait artist, and a music producer to pay. If I want to get this done, and at this rate, Ascension will unironically take a decade to finish, or probably longer. This is why I was able to be convinced to make the Patreon. Even if no one initially joins it, the potential that even one person can contribute to the game is worth it to me. Anyway, trying to get back on topic, With some less heavy subjects, school is going great, work is going great, and despite everything, I still managed to do a good amount of work this year. However, now that I'm doing school and work, I have less opportunities to work on my game, so while I hate to admit it, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't end up finishing Act 4 by next March. We'll see how things go, especially with Patreon factoring into the equation. For those who didn't know, for a while my social media of choice was Twitter. Despite its reputation, it's where I met most of my friends, and its format is a lot easier for me to get into than, say, Tumblr or Instagram or any of the other apps. However, anyone who is vaguely aware of Twitter knows how much worse things have gotten as of late. At some point, it looks like I couldn't get any worse, and then it just does. And with news of blocks basically meaning nothing and AI bullshit, I decided enough was enough. My personal account is now my private account, and it's completely abandoned. And while the Dusty Towers Twitter is still public, I don't plan on doing anything on it, save for the bare minimum amount of advertising. I don't even post about the weekly development updates on Patreon anymore. Chances are, the post for this video will be the first time I posted on Twitter since December. So, if I've abandoned Twitter, where can you find me? Well, the answer should be obvious. It's Blue Sky. I post about every development update over there, and I'm very active on my personal account. So from now on, you'll be seeing Blue Sky links in the description, and you can go there to get more frequent updates on the game. Outside of social media, however, you may have also noticed the mentioning of a portrait artist. Yes, after such a long time, I settled on an artist. Her online name is Kiki, and she has a unique art style that I was instantly drawn to. And with her work alongside our other artist, Oro, I believe they can give Ascension a strong visual identity. And speaking of the two of them, plans are currently in the works to have both of them start working on their respective assets, with Oro getting upgraded from a volunteer role to a paid one. This was in discussion for a while after I got a job and had actual money, but now it's official, and hopefully I'll have something from both of them to share with you all in the future. And that is just about everything I can think of to speak about. There are some things I could go into more detail on, the plethora of new weapons, items, and especially armor, the new bosses, the gimmicks, but at the end of the day, I'd rather save the nitty-gritty for people who find out when they play the game. And with me having a Patreon now, chances are I may go back to more frequent upload schedules. That is, if I have enough to actually talk about. I was expecting this video to be longer, but it only amounted to less than 6 full pages of script. But if I'm in the mood to, I will try to make more videos for those who are kind enough to support me. Speaking of which, this video was brought to you by the folks over on Patreon, including... Shit. Fuck. Join my Patreon!